Hey, welcome, Faithful Politics listeners and now viewers. Josh and I are starting a new, well, I shouldn't say a new. We are going to try to subject you to our beautiful faces. Hopefully this goes well. If not, you'll never see our faces again. I'm Will, your politics host, and I'm joined here by Josh, the faithful host, and I will tell everybody that I had zero idea that Josh is a white man.
Cat's out of the bag, dude.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah. You know what's funny is in my last job I worked with this guy named Tyrell, and we would travel together as consultants, and we would communicate with our clients over the phone or through email, and then when they meet us, they would be surprised to find out that Tyrell was a white dude. So then, like when we would meet them face to face, they would look at me. They would look at me and be like, "Oh, how are you, Mr. Tyrell?" And I'm like, "Oh, my name's Will."
And you should have just said, "I'm doing great."
then they just look really weird and like, I didn't realize I had that level of racism tucked away deep inside of me,
That's what you're best at, Will. Yeah. Revealing everyone's racism in their hearts.
This is true. I don't know how many times I've been told I'm the whitest black guy people know, which if you've made that statement at some point in time of your life and you're watching or listening to this, just know that is really offensive.
How offensive is it really?
Well, it's kind of like, it's like saying you're the most,
you're the skinniest fat dude I know.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. It's like it's stating, it's basically stating that there is a standard, and they're surprised that you were able to meet or exceed that standard. So by saying that you're the whitest black guy, I mean, because like nobody goes to a white person and says, "Oh, you're like the blackest white guy I know," without it saying.
They've said that to me.
I know, but it was probably used in the pejorative. It wasn't used like as a term of endearment. It's like, "Oh, Josh, gosh, you're just the blackest white guy I know." It's normally sent. Like in my experience, whenever anybody references a white person as a black person, it's always meant to insult. Like unless you're talking about Eminem or something,
yes.
Then that brother is definitely black. Yeah, he belongs in my camp.
Does he have vitiligo or whatever it's called?
Vitiligo?
Isn't it something like Michael Jackson had something that made his skin whiter? No. You better edit this out.
I don't know.
All I know is Uncle Ruckus had vitiligo, and he said it was the opposite of what Michael Jackson's got.
Okay, all right. I'll take it on faith that you know what you're talking about.
Please don't. I don't think I don't really think I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So it's been a pretty quiet week. This is the first full week of the Biden administration. So how would you grade his performance so far?
Well, I haven't really heard much, so I'll go average. He's not as fun as Trump.
No, it's funny. I was thinking about it this week, just watching news coverage. The media seems to not know what to do with themselves because, the Biden administration is, I don't know, like it's a bit appalling, like what they're doing right now. The fact that they think that America is ready to quit Trump cold turkey, after like this intravenous injection of Trump 24/7, 365. It's like you can't just get us off the Trump train that fast. This train's moving.
No, yeah, you can't, man. It's been very civil. It's been what has it been? Civil, not very controversial. I mean, I know he put out a few executive orders that everybody's mad about. At least everybody, as in like the conservatives are mad about. But that always happens. Executive orders always make people mad. Some people are great, some people are not. And but yeah, besides that, I've been trying to read his executive orders and I've already gotten behind. It's like I have my Bible plan that I'm trying to read, and I'm behind on that. And then I'm behind on my Biden plan I'm trying to read, and I'm behind on my Bible and Biden plan. The executive orders, it's
That's
like I'm
funny.
kind of looking at them, and some of them are like, I mean, they're all boring, right? But it's just like what's behind
Yeah.
them, and I don't know. I probably
Yeah.
already am too
Yeah,
far behind.
his press secretary had the nerve this week to have daily press briefings at the time that they stated they're going to have them. I mean, like, who does that? I mean, I can't remember the last time a president did that, at least within the last 4 years. And apparently, like, Fauci is unchained. You know, Fauci unchained.
Fauci, what is it? Fauci gone wild, dude. He's getting
Yeah, Fauci
vaccinations
gone wild.
everywhere.
That's right. Yeah, like he's been out and about doing interviews and trying his best not to speak ill, and trying not to convince America that he voted for Biden. Like, we all know he voted for Biden. Like, he was looking for an out. So that poor man.
Yeah, he went through the ringer on this one, huh?
Yeah, yeah. I saw him in an interview, and he was talking about how people were sending him like death threats, like both in the mail and the phone, email, his kids, his like grandkids. People are just like mad at science, and I don't get it, like he said on he opened one letter, and it had this powder stuff in it, and it like got all over him, and he started to freak out, and the Secret Service or whatever checked it out, and it was pretty benign, but still, like why, like, why? Come on, man.
Like a kid sent that? No, or
No, like a, I don't know, like
it
a
wasn't
boogaloo boy or
anthrax.
something.
It was borax. Isn't borax a thing?
Yeah, you can use it to make slime.
Yes, we've
um
made slime. It wasn't anthrax. It was borax. They look very similar, is my guess.
yeah, yeah, which is kind of weird. Yeah. So yeah, other than just, a normal functioning White House with all of the, normal controversy you would expect with Democrat controlled Senate, House, executive, it's been pretty quiet. Although, like, there's two stories I've been following. One, the impeachment,
Yeah,
and I'm really stoked about. We're going to be getting Eric Berger here on the episode, hopefully next week,
that'll be
to just
great.
talk about procedure, yeah, process about the impeachment. I'm really curious to kind of get his take on the fact that Chief Roberts isn't presiding. Um, and the other one that just broke recently is President Biden's brother. Did you hear about this?
Oh, what happened?
His brother apparently is out there, you know, basically talking up his relationship to the president, and apparently getting favors, like all the stuff that people were talking about with Hunter Biden before President Biden got elected. And I think that the one article I read in Politico was, his brother got on a private plane to the inauguration by some big Democrat donor, and has been making ads, touting that he's the brother of the president. And I don't know, it's just really like messed up stuff that you would like to think that we are past, but
Nope.
yeah,
We never will be, bro.
nope,
This is America,
yeah,
baby. Why would we even
yeah,
pass
yeah,
that?
yeah. It's like so much for draining the swamp, I guess.
No, it ain't never getting drained, dude. There's too much
The
water in
swamp is.
there.
Yeah. Oh, and the third story I've been following is the Alexei Navalny story, that probably hasn't been getting a whole lot of play in media circles, but it's Alexei Navalny is like this Russian dissident that's super anti-Putin, and this guy is he's kind of funny. Like he's a bit humorous, but also like he has like his own media kind of production where he's been exposing all of the corruption happening in the Russian government.
Mm-hmm.
And he produced a video showing like Putin made this, like invested a bunch of like taxpayer money or the government's money to build this like underground bachelor pad complete with like a swimming pool, bowling alley, hockey rink.
Wow.
Um, I mean, just like multi-million dollar like place. All the while his people are struggling because of the pandemic and just
Right.
the economic, situation happening around the world. And he was the guy that got poisoned. So he got poisoned by this nerve agent called Novichok, where they somehow put it in his underwear, and
Oh wow.
when it made yeah, when it made contact to his skin, it like put him in a coma, and they he needed to be hospitalized, but like his supporters were like, yeah, you probably shouldn't go to a Russian hospital. Angela Merkel volunteered to basically like bring him into their hospital, so he went there, got better. While he was there, he was like he pranked, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word. He pranked one of the people that poisoned him,
How do you know who it
to
was?
I don't know. I think he's got people within sort of like the Kremlin,
Mm,
because some of the information that he's getting, he can only get from like people close to Putin. So he called this officer, this FSB officer, to basically say, "Hey, we just want to do an after action on the poisoning of Alexei Navalny." He's speaking of himself, like, so basically he's tricking this person into thinking he's somebody else. So this person basically just tells him exactly like how he went about poisoning him,
wow.
um, and it's all on tape, and anyway, so with him getting better in Germany, he does something that like most normal people wouldn't do. He goes back to Russia, because he wants to kind of keep the fight against the Russian government. And as soon as he lands, Russian government arrests him. They basically say, you're going to do like 5 to 20 years or something
Wow.
because you violated your
In
probation,
Siberia.
like yeah, like on an earlier arrest, like he had, they had stated that part of his probation is he couldn't leave the country or something. So the fact that he went to another country because he got poisoned, that they're going to put him in prison, and that whole thing caused a huge uproar in Russia. I mean, like hundreds of thousands of people were like out protesting the streets. I think this was last weekend, and I mean, just tons of people, like in like over 100 cities. Russian protesters were out there, and like -60-degree weather. I mean, like you see pictures and images of this, and there's like snow everywhere, and just like you could barely see. And these people are out there just like marching and
Oh my
protesting
word.
the government. So it's definitely a story I'm following, just because we haven't really seen protests like that since I don't know when, a while. But yeah, so that's that's
You
kind of
mean in
the
Russia there hasn't been protests like that? Yeah,
yeah, in a long
I
while.
bet,
Yeah, in a
man.
long while. So Putin's probably shaking in his boots, wondering what the heck is going on. But and in lighter news, I know that this week we wanted to talk about Biden's faith and kind of like how that will affect his presidency a little bit. And before I hand it over to you as the resident theological expert, I it was kind of interesting prior to the show. I did a little bit of research just myself, just to kind of look at different stories about his faith and whatnot. And this is probably not going to come to any surprise to some people out there, but there's a large disparity between how the news media covers um, Biden's faith, particularly when compared to a Republican. And the example I used was Amy Coney Barrett. So the most recently confirmed Supreme Court justice. There was a lot of sort of uproar in the news about her Catholic faith and about, oh, that's going to make all of her decisions really, really crazy and just out there. and and like when you look at Biden's coverage of his faith, it's very uplifting. It's very like, oh, he's got a true north,
What a good
when it comes to
guy.
his decisions. Yeah. And so as I was reading these stories, I was just thinking like that this can't just be like a fluke, right? So I used the old Google machine, and I used the search words Joe Biden faith, and then found a bunch of articles from like NPR, Guardian, Washington Post, NBC News, Fox, and then I did Amy Coney Barrett faith from the same news organizations, and it's just like, I mean, it's almost black and white. I mean, you look at like an NPR article, and it's like how Joe Biden's faith shape his politics, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, good. And then you look up Amy Coney Barrett's faith under NPR, and it's like, Amy Coney Barrett's Catholicism is controversial but may not be a confirmation issue, or and it's just like, I don't know. I was surprised but not surprised that the disparity existed, but just to kind of see it so stark there was something else. So what do you think about? Is this news to you, Josh?
No, I don't feel like it's news. I mean, I don't remember what the report was. It was several years ago. I remember hearing about it. I used to listen to this guy. I still do. He's very, very conservative, but his name is Albert Mohler. He's the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. That's in Louisville, Kentucky. And so he's like super conservative, and so he's got this daily show, and we're kind of he analyzes news and events from a Christian worldview. That's what he says every time. And but he talked about a report that was essentially that the news media like overwhelmingly leans left, and overwhelmingly like even based on like voting like basically their voting patterns are Democratic or left. Um, Almost like I think it was something like 90% of
Mhm.
people in the news media, journalists, things like that. And so, not to say that they weren't speak like weren't truthful people or anything like that, but that there's just clearly such a bias in it, and so it doesn't really surprise me. I think that uh, that this is all part of what's going on with like this just a reflection of our culture and how political leanings have become the basically the top way that people like judge the character of someone else. That's what it kind of feels like. It's like people judge the character of someone else not through necessarily like do they lie? Do they cheat? Do they steal? I mean, if someone's a murderer, then okay. But it's more like, what do they believe, about abortion, or what do they believe about immigration, or how do they vote even more, like,
Mhm.
and what they post on Facebook and what they share. It's like, it seems to be where people are at. And this like political ideology has taken, it's like the litmus test for character right now, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah, I'm reading this book, which I recommend everybody. It's called "Why We Are So Polarized," and it's by a left leaning author named Ezra Klein, but he's someone that I really enjoy listening and reading, just because I think the way he presents his thoughts is very unique, and it's very informed. Well, in one of the chapters about it, he talks about identity and how number one, like just about everything is about identity politics. So when people try to use the phrase like, "Oh, it's just identity politics," well, like of course, like everything's identity politics, but he refers to political affiliations as like a mega identity, meaning that um, most people will make certain assumptions about an individual's character, hobbies, like diet, music taste by you know like hearing that somebody is like a Democrat or Republican. And he used like a commercial he saw. It was like some sort of political commercial where it was sponsored by a conservative group. They were talking about this one Democratic candidate. I can't remember the name of the person or who it was, but basically in the commercial, like they had just like these everyday people, say, "I'll never vote for vegan eating, Whole Foods, Trader Joe's shopping, hipster coffee frappuccino like tree hugging Democrat," and it's true. Like in the commercial, they're basically associating all these different like sub identities to kind of this mega identity, and you know and it's sad because like when and I think today like we actually do the same thing, like when it comes to, I don't know, like if someone says, "Hey, I love Trump, I support Trump," like in the back of our heads, we're thinking all these different things that we probably associate them with. To the same token, it's like if someone comes out and says, "Oh, I love, AOC in the squad," you know, then in the back of somebody's head is you're thinking all these other things, whether they're true or not. And like the introduction of a mega identity, I think, really kind of removes the individuality of just people as a whole,
Yes.
um, and it's a little, I don't know, like it's sad that we've kind of come to this part, which I think is why it's so weird for a lot of people to frame religious beliefs with, say, certain politicians of certain political
Right.
parties. So Biden is a Democrat. He subscribes to Catholicism. Amy Coney Barrett is a conservative who subscribes to the same faith,
Yes.
but yet our perception of of each of their faiths is almost kind of viewed through this partisan lens, which
Yes.
I don't think is necessarily like right. So I guess maybe you could start us off with by telling us like what is Catholicism.
Well, that kind of depends on who you ask. And just right from the beginning, I'm going to say, like, I didn't grow up Roman Catholic. I'm not an expert on it, but I do know some, probably more than your average person about church history. And Catholicism is really in its current form. Roman Catholicism is a result of the the Reformation in the 14th and 15th centuries. You had a Reformation um, where Martin Luther, and I need to make sure. Yeah, I mean, I said the 14th and 15th centuries, but I'm fairly certain about that. Let's see here, Martin Luther. Um, but yeah, you had this, and many people I'm sure have heard of him. But basically, so he was born November 10th, 1483. And so you have this Reformation that began, yes, in the 1500s. So that'd be like the 14th, the 15th and 16th centuries. But what happened is essentially there was this large movement that essentially became Protestantism. And then that branched out into many, many, many other, like literally, if you look up like denominations in the United States, there are like thousands. So it's like you have all of that started though with the Reformation. Not that people weren't different, There's even another schism that happened, I think, in the 10th century or 11th. It was basically between Eastern Orthodox and the Western Church, and that was a schism that happened. And then this schism meaning just like a separation in the church. And then the Reformation created this other schism at that time in the 1500s, primarily through the impetus of Martin Luther, and then many other people came after that. And what happened was there's essentially this large movement that formed that separated itself uh, from the church, because Catholic just means universal. And when it's separated from the church, this was such a huge deal, especially in Europe, in Western Europe, and separated itself. And so um, you had these kind of Protestant movements coming out. Calvinism, started by John Calvin and Martin Luther and Martin Zwingli, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. You have these and many, many other large figures. And everyone who's not a Catholic and a Christian, at this point, unless you're Eastern Orthodox, you owe kind of your spiritual heritage, so to speak, to that event and movement. And really, the official word would be a schism that happened during the Reformation. And what happened in result of that is that there's what's called a counter Reformation in the Catholic Church, where they shored up several different theological beliefs. And there's the Council of Trent, which was essentially like a council, is when the Pope calls together all of the different bishops to around all the world, because the Catholic Church now, I mean, it has been, it's the oldest organization in the world, and it has it's very, very complicated and a hierarchical a hierarchy of people, where the Pope's at the top and you have bishops and cardinals and archbishops. And I don't totally understand how all of it works. And that's why we were trying to find someone who's, Catholic priest or more of an expert in the kind of structure of Catholic of the Catholic Church and theology. But essentially, what you had was this this council that created that was a counter Reformation. It was trying to move against and in opposition to the kind of beliefs and principles that were coming out of the Reformation. And so there was a council where essentially they separated themselves from Protestantism, from anyone coming out. They declared them not to be part of the church, things like that. I think they were even anathema, meaning cursed. So all of that kept going in the Catholic Church for centuries. And even at the end of the 19th century, certain things about that we know of the Catholic Church when it comes to Mary, or even when it comes to the infallibility of the Pope as he's speaking. Some of these things came out in the it was in the 1800s, at the end of the 19th century. And a lot of that depended on the Pope that you had in office. And then even up to the 1950s and 60s, there was for instance, all the Catholic masses were in Latin, ecclesiastical Latin. And but then this Pope came to power, and his name was John Paul. I think it was John Paul the 20. I don't remember exactly what it was. Yes, it was Saint John the 23rd came to power, and then he actually got and became a pope in 1958 through 1963. Died in 1963, and then he called a Second Vatican Council that essentially made sweeping changes to the Catholic Church. And so the Catholic Church then started doing um, mass in the regular language of the people. It became much more open. It started to be open up, like essentially consider those who are Protestants to be, instead of cursed and anathema and cut off from the church, they were considered to be like distant brothers, or something like that, like kind of there, like not like they should be in the Catholic Church, but but they're not going to hell, like necessarily, that kind of stuff. And that was a huge change that happened in the 1960s,
Hmm.
called the Second Vatican Council. And
Can
yeah,
I ask you a question about that? Um, so so most of everything I know about the Catholic Church I learned from either Dan Brown books or like the Kevin Smith film Dogma, um, which I'm sure is probably 100% accurate. But
yes.
um, like I'm curious, like what separates, to the best of your knowledge, say like the faith that you have versus, broadly speaking, the faith that Catholics have.
Yeah, probably one of the things that separates like Protestantism from Catholicism, I would put them down into a few different areas. One, leadership. So in the Catholic Church, they are subject to a very organized leadership that goes all the way to the top with the Pope, and have cardinals and archbishops and bishops to priests. And they have, again, it's this massive amount of individuals involved in this massive organization that has many different charities, many different departments and parts of it, and schools and hospitals. I mean, it is massive. um, and so that structurally, um, what I do is very different than the Catholic Church, I would say, in its structure. So and that would be one thing. The second thing would be like what distinguishes me, say, from the Catholic Church outside of the structure, is the theology. And although there are many different similarities, there are some key differences. Um, One being that in the Catholic understanding, to my understanding, in the Catholic theology, um, there are things called sacraments, and the sacraments, I believe there's 7 of them, and they're very intense. It's sacramental in that these rites and rituals confer some kind of real spiritual power, and almost like a power that has some kind of salvation or saving power attached to it. So, like for me, it's like you come to Christ. Say baptism would be a huge one, um, and like communion. So, or the Eucharist is what it would be called in different churches and different denominations. So, baptism, I believe, and many like me believe, and in many denominations, that what's called a believer's baptism. Someone comes in, they accept Christ, they become a convert, if you want to say that, and then they're baptized. Um, in the Catholic Church, baptism, um, adult baptism, can happen if someone converts and they go through a process and then they're baptized. But it's a christening when they're young, and it's essentially baptism has a kind of, again, like salvation. The word is salvific, but it has some kind of power to it that confers God's grace and salvation. Whereas I don't take it to that place. Like if it's more about a confession of the heart. It's about a posture of the heart, things like that. That would be like an area of difference in theology. And there are others. Again, there's a lot of agreement, but there are some key ones. The authority, like the authority of the church for them, one of the things is that the church can come out with, this is probably one of the bigger ones. The church can actually speak, and as the Pope speaks ex cathedra from his, meaning like from the throne, kind of, or from the seat. As the Pope speaks that, then what it's considered the infallible word of God. Um, Protestants don't believe that. They think there's only one infallible word. And that's the words that we have contained in the books of the Bible, the 66 books, 39 of the Old Testament, 27 of the New. And that's basically the extent to the spiritual authority that comes from the Bible. And then things beyond that, which would be considered tradition or things passed on in the Catholic Church, they would consider to have authority of the kind, like authority in step there with Scripture. Now, again, I don't know the nuances of it, like, and I'm sure that there are nuances of what that means, but like the view of Scripture is different. The view of authority is different. The structure of the church is different. And those are just a few things, not to mention things like Mary or all the other sacraments or things like that. So there are significant differences.
So well, before I say this, I will say for our listeners and viewers that if you are a priest, bishop, or any of those levels, and you want to come on our show to kind of either rebuttal or provide our audience with just a better understanding,
Yes.
by all means, please reach out to us. Um, but my question was, especially like when you mentioned about authority, I if I were to give you like a hypothetical, let's just say one day the Pope says, okay, we, I don't know, like we want to kill all dogs, like it becomes a tenet of the faith. This is just a really, really out there sort of scenario.
Sure.
Like, could that, prompt leaders that subscribe to the Catholic faith, i.e., like the President Biden, like would that inform his decision making process? As best as you see it, like what do you think about that?
Yeah, for some, so when the Pope is speaking, like he'll do certain um like letters called encyclicals. And they don't all carry, to my understanding, they don't all carry the same authority or weight. So it's not as if, so if he's saying, like if he's writing something or making a statement, it's not as if they're looking and saying, oh, that's the very word of God. There's I don't know what the procedure is for him to write um, like, I think what it's called is like a papal bull, which is like when you're speaking from a place of infallible authority, when he would be speaking from a place of infallible authority. I don't know what the process is. Like, I don't know if it's like, hey, I mean, I really would love to know, like, hey, like, I just know God's saying this to me. Like, he wakes up, he's like, I got to write this papal bull today, like it's got to go out. Or if it's like something where it's got to go through a process of like the cardinals are looking and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, or that doesn't. My guess is it's more the latter. That's a process that has to be gone through, just so the Pope's not like tweeting like some like hey, here's the latest papal bull, like you got to send, everyone has to send like $1 million to the Pope today. You're going to hell or something like that. So I don't think, like there's definitely like a process. I don't know what that is. It would be cool to hear from someone who did, or we could do some research. I'm sure we can find out. I just wasn't able to do that this time. But in terms of like how that affects leaders, Biden's he's the second Catholic president. Do you know who the first
Hmm.
one was?
George Washington.
No, John F. Kennedy.
Oh, yeah, that
John
was close.
JFK. And I remember my dad telling me one time, like, yeah, everyone was afraid that when JFK became president, that he was just like that. The Pope was now president. And I'm a little bit more afraid of Xi Jinping, but whatever.
Oh, is he Catholic too? I didn't realize that. You heard it here first, folks. Breaking
Breaking
news.
news. He's converted from, I don't know. Anyway, but my guess. So when it comes to like how is this going to affect Biden and um, the way that he runs like the presidency, my guess is that in terms of his policies, it's not going to affect him that much. It doesn't seem like it has. In
Hmm.
terms of his policies, they seem like they're very much just in line with whatever the Democratic Party's platform is, and I'm not surprised by that. I think in his personal life, I think in his final decision making, I mean, just like any of us, our faith is going to inform us. He's in an office that's going to require him to execute the law, and I think he'll do that. And I think he seems like an honest person to me. I mean, I don't know him. He seems like a very devout person. But here's what I did want to point something out interesting, like that I found very interesting as I was thinking about this and looking into this. So, actually, on the day of his inauguration, I don't know if you saw this, but there was some controversy in the Catholic Church actually.
Hmm.
In America, one of the things that happened is it was a statement that was released. It was on the inauguration of Joseph Biden, and it was released of the Most Reverend Jose H. Gomez, Archbishop of Los Angeles. Um, he's the president of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. So he says working with President Biden will be unique, however, as he's our first president in 60 years to profess the Catholic faith. In a time of growing and aggressive secularism in American culture, when religious believers face many challenges, it will be refreshing to engage with a president who clearly understands in a deep and personal way the importance of religious faith and institutions. Mr. Biden's piety and his personal story, his moving witness to how his faith has brought him solace in times of darkness and tragedy, his longstanding commitment to the gospel's priority for the poor, all of this I find hopeful and inspiring. At the same time, as pastors, the nation's bishops are given the duty of proclaiming the gospel in all its truth and power, in season and out of season, even when that teaching is inconvenient or when the gospel's truths are contrary to the directions of the wider society and culture. So I must point out that our new president has pledged to pursue certain policies that would advance moral evils and threaten human life and dignity, most seriously in the areas of abortion, contraception, marriage, and gender. Of deep concern is the liberty of the church and the freedom of believers to live according to their consciences. So that came out the day of his inauguration, and apparently, like he didn't get that
Hmm.
like okayed from like the Vatican or something. So
Hmm.
they were kind of mad. So you got this archbishop, and then here's what the Pope said to the Honorable Joseph R. Biden, President of the United States of America. It says, on the occasion of your inauguration as the 46th President of the United States of America, I extend cordial good wishes and the assurance of my prayers that Almighty God will grant you wisdom and strength in the exercise of your high office. Under your leadership, may the American people continue to draw strength from the lofty political, ethical, and religious values that have inspired the nation since its founding. At a time when the grave crises facing our human family call for far-sighted and united responses, I pray that your decisions will be guided by a concern for building a society marked by authentic justice and freedom, together with unfailing respect for the rights and dignity of every person, especially the poor, the vulnerable, and those who have no voice. I likewise ask God, the source of all wisdom and truth, to guide your efforts to foster understanding, reconciliation, and peace within the United States and among the nations of the world in order to advance the universal common good. With these sentiments, I willingly invoke upon you and your family and the beloved American people an abundance of blessing. So that was the Pope that
Mm,
said that. And I just thought that
mm.
was so interesting, the stark contrast between those two statements, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't,
Yeah, it is. Oh, go
well,
ahead.
no,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, this Pope, and this is just my take from kind of a casual observer, seems definitely more liberal than a lot of the other popes that we've seen in the past. I mean, a lot
Yes,
of his stances about equality and what have you, like stances actually I agree with.
yes,
And it is kind of interesting because like I've always wondered like if I were a political official, like how would I reconcile the things I believe and hold dear to my heart, um, and the pull that I would have from my constituents that put me in a political office,
right.
especially when that pull, you know, like draws me to things that I don't really like endorse, and and it's almost like on one side, maybe that's kind of the beauty of our democracy. you know on the other side, it's like, why would somebody want to put themselves in that kind of situation
Yes,
where, like, if I happen to win a seat in a, I don't know, like really red district, and there was a vote about capital punishment and they wanted me to vote for it, like I would take issue with that.
right.
because like
Yeah,
because I've got really strong, like, I don't know, beliefs that nobody is if they've got a beating heart, they're worth saving,
right.
um so it is kind of weird, and I think it's going to be interesting to kind of see how he sort of tackles some of these things that are, I don't know, coming up his way.
Yeah, I mean, he seems very devout, like he's very devout in the sense that he has been consistently a churchgoer, and has, it seems like he's done this, I mean, for his whole life as much as we can see. And so, I have no doubt in one sense, just like, he's a devout person. He believes in God. I think he believes in Jesus, and I think he wants to do good in the world. And also at the same time, he got to the place where he's at because he is in a position where he had to you know uh, conform to the party line many times, and he got there because he was willing to um, agree with policies that several of the Democratic policies are clearly at, like when I say Democrat, like the Democratic Party are clearly at odds with the Catholic Church's teaching. Um, and still at odds, even with this newer, Pope. I mean, none of that has changed. He's shown an attitude that was more, uh, congenial, which I think is good. But nothing has changed in terms of Catholic theology about some of the major things that even the Pope was talking about: gender, family, stance on homosexuality, stance on same-sex marriage, stance on abortion, stance on those kind of issues. That's very much part and parcel of Catholic faith, especially politically. Its influence has been the central focus on the family, and to that I owe much to my many, many um, mentors from afar. People that I've never met have been Catholic writers, and people that have just been able to articulate very cogently defenses for some of my most deeply held beliefs, even around those areas. And so I think that, and he is, I don't think it's gonna, like, I don't think his Catholic faith is going to affect him personally. I don't think it's going to like affect his decisions, um, in a way that, like, I think conservatives would want at all. I don't think it's going to do it at all personally. I don't like, I can't, like, and that's just my sense.
Yeah.
I think he's going to continue with the policies that he already has. He's reflected it in several of his, um, executive orders already, and that's not a surprise. I don't think it should be a surprise. I don't know why anyone would be surprised. It's, it hasn't changed in that sense.
Yeah, well, I will push back a little bit on one thing you said, just to kind of create the balance, where
Yeah.
you said that there are some things in his Catholic faith that doesn't necessarily align with some of the stated goals and beliefs of the Democratic Party, and I would go on to say that there's probably things in his faith that don't correspond with those in the Republican Party.
Yes, no doubt.
Like
Mhm.
on issues of like poverty
Yes,
or
definitely.
immigration, or like,
Yes.
'cause, which is like, unfortunately, kind of like the way we've all kind of been trained to think is that, oh, okay, religion is bad for Democrats but good for Republicans,
Yeah, but it's not.
where
Yep.
we just we like naturally assign, faith to whatnot. But one last question I have for you, and then we can kind of wrap it up, is what concern do you have about, say, religious liberty, religious freedom, kind of in the Biden era? Because I know that Republicans would have us believe, like, when Obama was in office, that he's going to enforce like Sharia law and
Right.
close all the churches, and and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So knowing that Biden's a man of faith, like, does that make you feel better, worse, about the same with regards to kind of religious freedom in the country?
Um, I think that, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic that he may be more, like, be a, like, a greater advocate of, religious freedom for all people involved, and for all, I'm cautiously optimistic, not necessarily in his statements, but in his policies and in behind the doors conversations, and in, the kind of legislation that comes out that, may protect, say, pastors who don't believe in, um, you know, same sex marriage, to be forced to, um, either have one at their church premises, or, I'm just giving that example because it's such a clear one. There's many others, but, or have to, perform the marriage or something like that, or lose either, like, 501c3 nonprofit status. Um, so, I mean, they can't, like, the government can't strip someone of their, you know, of their ordination or anything like that. I mean, that's such an egregious, breaking of the separation between church and state. But, they can, what they can do is with tax, with taxes and government and laws and things like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it's not just on Biden; it's on a lot of different people, and there are a lot of people and a lot of judges and a lot of things that I have to go through. And I don't feel super concerned about it right now. Not to say that that won't come, um, but I feel cautiously optimistic.
Awesome. Well, that's good. Well, on that positive note, yeah. So I think we did it. Video podcast.
Vidcast, we're vodcasters now. I'm trying to get good lighting in here.
Yeah. So if this works, you may see us again. If not, you'll never have to see us and just listen to us. But yeah. Well, great. Thanks,
Hey,
Josh.
thank you, Will.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.